to make sure that everything is nice and stable all across the YouTube platform. Also, I just kind of went live a little bit impromptu here. So, before we officially get started, guys, I want to give a few minutes for some people to start rolling on in here. We've got some news and rumors starting to develop surrounding Courtland Sutton potentially getting traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's kind of some conflicting information at this point in time, so I want to wait for a few people to get in here before we officially get started, guys. We can also maybe chat it up a little bit about Bo Nix and the Broncos' overall quarterback situation, who's going to start at quarterback week one. I went and tried to do a live stream earlier today, but I kept getting distracted during it. I had my cat in the background just making a whole lot of noise and messing around and stuff, so it did not come out the way I wanted it to. So I thought we'd maybe come back on live here and at least chop it up a little bit about Courtland Sutton and dive through some of the rumors, find out what's factual, what's BS. Is he going to get traded? Is he not going to get traded? There's been some reports kind of coming out both from the Broncos side and the Pittsburgh Steelers side. We've got Maverick in the house. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Hopefully you are doing well, my friend. All right, so I think we've gone on about a minute here, so we can go ahead and jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. There was a tweet from Benjamin Albright earlier today that kind of stirred the pot a little bit here in Broncos country. I will go ahead and bring that in right now. He tweeted it at 5:10 p.m. It's just a little gif here that says reunited and it feels so good. And when you pair that with a tweet that he had retweeted previously from Bryant McFadden of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the former Steelers player, now covers the team, he said that he's hearing Steelers general manager Omar Khan is cooking something up and a trade for a playmaker could be coming soon. Albright tweeted that, then he tweets this. So naturally, people are going to connect the dots here and they're going to think, hey, Albright's linking Courtland Sutton to the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was another report out today from, I believe it was Jarrett Bailey, writer for USA Today and Behind the Steel Curtain, that said that the Steelers and the Rams both reached out to the Denver Broncos in regards to Courtland Sutton's services during the draft. And both teams were like, nah, we're good. Both teams were told, nah, we're good. Denver was pretty content not trading away Courtland Sutton. Then you get this from Albright, and it kind of rekindles some of those trade rumors a little bit. He kind of squashes them down after this, though. He says that, in response to this tweet from Mile High Mario Vitanzi, Ben's confirming Sutton to Pittsburgh, and then he says, I'm not. Mark, thank you so much for the $5, dude. I really appreciate it, man. Says, congrats to my mate Gage on all the best on 3K subs. Hard work pays off. Thank you, dude. I really appreciate it. Here's to the next 3K, man. I'm really hoping that we can get at least 5,000 subs by the time training camp rolls around. But then, responding to this report from CTESPN, basically echoing the same thing that was said in the report for Brian McFadden that Albright retweeted, Mike Kliss says, it's not Courtland. There are no plans to trade him, as Peyton and Peyton let Bronco Land know in recent weeks. Why would you say Bronco Land, Mike? Come on. I think he's doing it on purpose to troll. Sutton is in good standing with the team, at least as far as the front office is concerned. I don't think Sutton is in good standing with the team as far as Sutton's concerned. He wants more guaranteed money. He only has $2 million worth of guaranteed money left on his deal for 2024. None left on his deal for 2025. So I don't blame him whatsoever for wanting more guaranteed money. I don't think this is about Courtland Sutton necessarily wanting to leave Denver more than it is him wanting to be more fairly compensated for his services. I can also understand the Denver Broncos' hesitancy to pay him. In the last few years, he's only had one fairly good season, and that was in 2023 with Russell Wilson, and he was utilized as mostly a 50-50 jump ball guy to bail Russ out of bad situations. He was also a big-time 50-50 ball guy in the red zone, accumulating, I believe it was 9 or 10 touchdowns. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Courtland Sutton was a big factor for the Denver Broncos in the red zone last year. If he's going to stay in Denver, which some of the reports from Mike Kliss and now Albright kind of going back on what he was hinting at earlier, I think his role may kind of change now that Russell Wilson is no longer in the building. Bo Nix is more of a quarterback who operates underneath. He's not really going to push the ball downfield too much. He operates on time, in rhythm, in structure, in the play. And I think that that's going to be more akin to maybe a Michael Thomas role for Courtland Sutton, the same role that Thomas held with Drew Brees, where he ran a lot of slant routes, a lot of curl routes, a lot of quick stop routes, just stuff that finds the void in the zone coverage underneath, and it allows Nix to hit it on time, in structure, and in rhythm, and that's basically the essence of a Sean Payton offense. Last year, the offense that Sean Payton was running with Russell Wilson and, by extension, Courtland Sutton was not a true Sean Payton offense. It was backyard football, out of structure, chaos stuff that Sean Payton just doesn't want to live in. The question becomes, between Courtland Sutton's displeasure with the organization, as well as his potential changing of roles in this offense, does that make him expendable? Apparently, the Broncos don't think so, because I strongly maintained that if they were to trade Courtland Sutton, they would have traded him on day 3 of the NFL draft, when basically all the wide receivers that were noteworthy had come off the board. Courtland Sutton would have probably gone for a 5th-round pick or something like that. I was assuming to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the Steelers did add some wide receivers in the draft. They added Roman Wilson out of Michigan. They have yet another Wilson on that roster. So it's not like the Steelers didn't address their wide receiver room. I still think the Steelers might be in play for a wide receiver, and it might be a wide receiver that, ironically enough, played with Russell Wilson before and wears the number 14, but I don't think it's Courtland Sutton. I do think it might be DK Metcalf. There have been some rumors about DK Metcalf maybe wanting out of Seattle, and DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson have a strong relationship. That's well documented. DK looks up to Russ as a mentor, so maybe that's the guy that could be headed to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Antonio Brown's CTESPN account, again, however the hell much credit you want to give that outlet, they tweeted that you can't have a wide receiver wearing the same number, and obviously George Pickens wears number 14 there in Pittsburgh right now. If it is a wide receiver that wears number 14 right now, just based on these reports from Mike Kliss, as well as Benjamin Albright kind of walking back on what he had said earlier, I'm going to guess that this is in reference to possibly DK Metcalf and not Courtland Sutton. Holy Diver says, if Sutton wants more money, he needs to prove he's worth it in training camp and preseason. I definitely agree with that. That should also extend into the regular season as well. If I'm the Broncos, I'm not going to pay Courtland Sutton until next year. I understand he wants more guaranteed money, and I'm generally in support of that, but right now, the Broncos are in a spot where they can't really afford to give Sutton more guaranteed money unless they backload it. And even then, you have to have the conversation, do they want to commit to Courtland Sutton long term? That is where I could see an argument in favor of trading away Courtland Sutton. I just believe that it would have already happened by now, and based on these reports saying that Courtland Sutton is maybe viewed as a Michael Thomas in this offense, now that it's going back to the traditional Sean Payton offense, I don't know what to make of this at this point. I don't know, again, if this is just Benjamin Albright stirring the pot and he kind of goes back on it now that Mike Kliss says it's not Courtland Sutton, or maybe this is maybe him hinting at DK Metcalf rather than Courtland Sutton. D-Rock says, my biggest concern is TP. He's the you-know-what, making it through training camp in the preseason. Hey, man, you can't have as much negative injury luck as Tim Patrick has. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time 2 years in a row when he tore his ACL in 2022 and then tore his Achilles in 2023. Absolute rotten, disgusting luck for Tim Patrick. Sean Payton loves Tim Patrick, and I truly believe that he has a vision for Tim Patrick in this offense. That's why he was so heavily recruited and coming back to Denver this year rather than hitting the free agent market, because Sean Payton believes in Tim Patrick. The problem, again, is the injuries these past 2 seasons. Have they zapped his explosiveness and his playmaking ability? That's what we have to determine right now. Whenever you have a player that suffers an Achilles injury and an ACL injury back-to-back, that's generally a pretty lethal combination for their career. And so I'm very curious to see what Tim Patrick looks like when we get him back on the field. Will he still look like the same dominant receiver that we saw in 2021? It's crazy to think about the last Broncos quarterback that we saw throw Tim Patrick a ball in a game was Drew Lock in the season finale of 2021. That is absolutely crazy, man. We got Crumble Cookies in the house saying the Steelers are a mess. They're not built to win. Right when Russ gets benched for Fields, he's going to whine and complain and make the Steelers' lives a living hell. I mean, Russell Wilson, when he was benched here in Denver, did kind of make a little bit of a scene in that last press conference. I do think he is in full awareness of his situation, though, in Pittsburgh, and I think he knows that his leash is relatively short. Broncos fan in the house saying our receiver room is weak if he's gone. Patrick can't stay healthy. We could give him incentives. See, that might be the realistic solution here if there is going to be more money given to him, is that it might be incentive based if he hits a certain catch threshold, a certain touchdown threshold, certain thresholds to meet those incentives. That would absolutely make sense. We got Mark Steelers Nation Australia saying we are not a mess, but we have your opinion. I mean, I think the Steelers have a direction. I do. I think that the Steelers have really good process in how they're building their organization. I just wonder if their approach at quarterback is the right one. They're kind of hedging their bets between two players and seeing which one works out at the end of the day. So I'm supportive of that, but if it doesn't work out for them, I do anticipate the Steelers being in the quarterback market in 2025. We got D-Rock in the house saying true. That's why I'm concerned. We got Mundungus saying you have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Yeah, you're looking great. Come on, man. I think that the Steelers at least have a direction that they're going, but Mark's a good dude, man. Steelers Nation Australia. He was originally one of the co-hosts of Pittsburgh Steelers Syndicate, the second oldest syndicate channel behind Detroit Lions Syndicate. I joined a couple months after Mark, I'd say. Off topic, but who do you think Denver's tight end 1 is next year? That's the question, isn't it? I strongly believe that Denver would address the tight end position in the draft. They didn't do it. They did sign 2 UDFA tight ends. They signed one out of Georgia Tech, and then they signed Thomas Yasmin, the tight end out of Utah. So both of those guys, just by default with the state of the current Broncos tight end room, have a chance to make the roster. But right now, you've got Greg Dulcich, who has not been able to stay healthy these last 2 years. He's barely played. His development and his growth has been stunted because of that. You've got Adam Troutman, who, I'm going to be a little bit harsh here, but it's just the truth. Adam Troutman's awful. He can't play. He's freaking awful. I have no clue why the Broncos re-signed Adam Troutman. You've got Nate Atkins in the building as kind of an H-back, almost a fullback backup to Mike Burton. He was a UDFA from last year that the Broncos really, really like. And then you got Lucas Kroll, who is very similar to a Greg Dulcich prototype. I think they view Kroll as almost like Greg Dulcich insurance, but right now you don't have a tight end in your room who does everything. Somebody who can do blocking at a high level as well as be an impact receiver. The Broncos did pass on one to take Bo Nix and Brock Bowers. I still think that taking the quarterback is the right decision. It doesn't matter if you have dynamic playmakers. If you don't have somebody who can throw him the ball, it's not going to work. But the Broncos did have other opportunities to add to the tight end room, namely when they traded their first pick in the 5th round to go up to get Troy Franklin. It was in the middle of the 4th round where we started to see a big-time run on tight ends in the draft. And that was where Denver could have maybe, instead of trading up to get Troy Franklin, they could have traded up and gotten themselves a tight end, which was a more pressing need than wide receiver. On top of that, there were better wide receivers on the board, in my opinion, than Troy Franklin. That's why I feel like I have such a big issue with this pick, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, man, that's the direction that the Broncos went in. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they added to the tight end room via free agency at this point. Logan Thomas is probably the best name available, so keep an eye on that as a possibility. I don't even know if the Broncos' current starting tight end or their starting tight end heading into week 1 is currently on the roster. I really don't. All right, Mark, please stop arguing about the Steelers, man. I totally understand, but we don't need any arguments or any of this in the chat. Not necessary at all. We're all friends here. We all can get along. Mike Kliss said it's not, but we'll see. Sutton paired with Russ in Pittsburgh would change things for the Steelers. I do think Sutton would be a good pairing with Russ. We've seen it work before, but the question is, will Sutton be traded? At this point, if I'm going to hedge my bets on it, I'm going to say no. They like Troutman's nickname, Trousers. D-Rock says, I hate to say it, but the Steelers' quarterback room is better than ours. It certainly has a high ceiling, but at the end of the day, they don't have a definitive answer moving forward. The Broncos, at least on paper, do in Bo Nix. I am a big proponent of the direction the Steelers are going in. I hope that the Steelers do well. I hope Russell Wilson does well in Pittsburgh, except for whenever we play them here in Denver. I'm going to hedge my bets and say that that's week 1. But no arguments, just discussing. Cool. As long as it doesn't get out of hand, I'm all for good discussion about your teams, and I'm all for good disagreements too. That guy Yasmin's UDFA highlights are sick. He's definitely one of those physical freaks of nature that you take a chance on as an undrafted free agent. There are some concerns that he's played 6 years and hasn't really had a whole lot of production, but I'm going to more equate that to the crappy quarterback situation that Utah's had and just the overall crappy surrounding situation Utah's had. You could make that same argument as well for Devon Vele, and maybe his production would have been higher had Vele had better surrounding cast, including quarterback and coaching around him. So, at the end of the day, man, if we were to sit here right now, I don't necessarily think Courtland Sutton is going to get traded. I didn't think that an hour ago when I saw Albright's tweet, but now that we've seen Albright kind of go back on what he had said, and then Mike Kliss kind of fanning the flames or dumping some water on the flames, fanning it makes them spread, but kind of dumping some water on the flames a little bit, I think that Courtland Sutton at this point in time might be safe here in Denver. So now, guys, Mr. Memester in the house, good to see you. I just joined. Is he getting traded? I don't think so at this point in time. I'll go ahead and flash this tweet one more time here from Mike Kliss that says, it's not Courtland Sutton, no plans to trade him. As George Payton and Sean Payton let Bronco Land know in recent weeks, Sutton is in good standing with the organization. So at this point in time, I don't think Sutton has any leverage to get traded if he absolutely wants out. If the Broncos want to keep him, they're going to keep him. All the cards are in the Broncos' hands right now. They control everything. Speaking of that, are we cool now on the Vele saga? I think I've calmed down on that a little bit more. I mean, the thought process of bringing a 26-year-old rookie initially when it happened in the moment definitely caught me off guard. But now that I hear the Broncos' thought process behind it, it does make sense. We'll see if it pans out because there were higher rated players on the board, just like with Troy Franklin. But if it works out, just like what I said with Troy Franklin, nobody's going to give a crap. We got Thomas Martin in the house saying, I believe that Pittsburgh has more opportunities for Sutton than Denver. I don't know if I'd agree with that necessarily. I think they're about on par with each other. It's, do you want to play with a quarterback who operates out of chaos, out of structure, just throws up those 50-50 balls to you and throws them up in the red zone to you? Maybe that's a good symbiotic relationship between Russ and Courtland, and maybe maybe Courtland wants to continue that. Maybe Russ does as well. Or you can look at it from the perspective of, do you want to play with the young first-round rookie who can operate in structure, on time, in rhythm of the play, which is what Sean Payton wants? Do you want to transition your role to more of a Michael Thomas guy who can maybe accumulate more volume production underneath as opposed to the big bulk stats in chunk plays? So it's all about how you think how Courtland Sutton thinks he wants to go at the end of the day. Does he want to be a backyard scrambly guy with a backyard scrambly quarterback, or does he want to be an on-time in structure guy with an on-time in structure quarterback? It's all about what you want to do at the end of the day. How's the O-line in your opinion? The Epic Gamer says. By the way, we got MRVB in the house saying, Gage, good to see you, man. I think the Broncos' offensive line is better than I think the general fan base gives it credit for, and that's because I think a lot of fans look at the raw sack numbers, see that Russell Wilson got sacked a ton last year, and that must mean that the offensive line sucks. If you look at some of the advanced statistics, and if you look at the tape, what you'll see is a lot of the sacks were on Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson would frequently bail from clean pockets. He would spin into pressure, and he would leave plays on the field. He would leave wide open receivers on well-schemed plays on the field because he wouldn't be able to see them. He'd spin into trouble. If you look at the advanced statistics, 70% of the sacks that were taken last year by Broncos quarterbacks were on that quarterback, be it Russell Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. Obviously, Russell Wilson started 15 games last year in comparison to just 2 for Stidham. So that means most of the sacks last year that were taken were on Russell Wilson. Not all of them were on the offensive line. Right now, the only question mark I think you can have on the offensive line is center and right tackle. McGlinchey did play better as the season went on last year, so I think that's kind of calmed down a little bit. Center, who's going to be your starting guy? Right now, it seems like Alex Forsyth, who was Bo Nix college center in Oregon, so that could bode very, very well. Besides Nix, which rookie has a chance to get playing time this season? I think a lot of them do. I think that Jonah Ellis has a strong chance too, because we need somebody who can be a Batman amongst Robins in that edge rush room. I also think that Chris Abrams-Drain is going to see playing time, possibly as the starting dimebacker for the Denver Broncos. Audric Estime is very clearly going to see playing time. If Javonte Williams isn't careful, Audric Estime is going to overtake him for the RB1 role. So those are the rookies that I feel like could see some significant playing time. And, of course, Troy Franklin as well. Who do you think Sutton would want his starting quarterback to be? Again, like I said earlier, it's all depending on what type of quarterback do you want. Do you want more of a Russell Wilson type or more of a Bo Nix type? Mr. Meemster says, I would like to thank you for all this news, man. Best Broncos reporter, best Broncos YouTuber besides Brandon Perna. I'm going to say, man, that's a big compliment. Brandon Perna is easily the best in the game. He's the golden standard for sports YouTubers out there, in my opinion. Brings the perfect blend of comedy and seriousness covering your team. I think Perna is just the best, and he's an awesome dude, too. I got to meet Perna and chat with him a little bit. I believe he's still subscribed to the channel. When him and Grossi had the fan meetup over at Breckenridge Brewing in Littleton. That was really, really cool. That was when Grossi was doing the 30 and 30. Perna, super down-to-earth dude. Love his work. One of my inspirations and one of the earliest Broncos YouTubers I've ever watched. Early call. Who's starting on the D-line? All right, I just need to refresh myself on the depth on the D-line, so I'm going to bring up my favorite website, Lads. Get this depth chart in here, just so that way we can make sure that we got our ducks in a row here. I actually think our lads has it pretty right on. I think that it'll be Zach Allen, DJ Jones, and John Franklin Myers. They'll factor in Malcolm Roach quite a bit because of how much money they gave him in free agency. Angelo Blackson, a good depth piece. Matt Henningsen, also a good depth piece, will probably make the active roster. Jordan Jackson, he's a good player. I think he's more of a practice squad candidate. Rashard Lawrence, they brought him in as a free agent, and he's somebody who has some ties to Vance Joseph from Arizona, so we'll see what happens with him. And then Jordan Miller, who's a undrafted free agent from this year. He's a pure nose tackle. I don't know what's going to become of him, to be honest with you. But John Franklin Myers is very clearly going to be one of your starters. Zach Allen's going to be very clearly one of your starters. I'm curious again what's going to happen at nose, though, between DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach. I also wouldn't throw Jordan Miller out of that camp as well because I thought that he played really, really well. So, as far as your interior defensive line is concerned, that's probably what you are going to end up with. Real talk, you guys think Pookie is going to bounce back? I don't know, man. The data suggests that running backs coming off of multi-ligament knee injuries like that generally have a hard time bouncing back. So I really don't know at this point. They drafted Audric Estime for a reason. Pretty clearly they needed insurance in the event that he doesn't. I'm very hopeful that he does, but realistically, the Broncos had to plan for the event that that does not happen. We got Thomas saying, just checking out enemy territory, Mark. That's funny. Mundunga says, I think Estime is going to share some of the snaps with Williams to take some of the pressure off. Estime is a beast. He's a beast and he's young. He's only 20 years old, man. The sky is his limit, and I don't know, man. Javonte Williams, if he doesn't bounce back, there's a chance that he might be gone. I genuinely feel that way. Give him a chance to get a fresh start somewhere else, because Audric Estime feels like he might be the future for the Denver Broncos. But I'm hoping Pookie can bounce back and they can have a true 1-2 punch back there with Javonte Williams and Audric Estime. What about Tebow at tight end? I swear to God, man, if Tim Tebow ever tries to make an NFL comeback... Dude, Perna is absolutely hilarious, Mark. He is the best. He was great, especially in the screen game. So you're talking about Tebow there. Appreciate you, Gage. Hopefully one day DNVR or one of the other Broncos pods pick you up. But in the meantime, keep doing the good work. It would be cool to maybe do some work with one of those guys, but I want to build my own brand, man. That's why I joined a small upstart brand in the Sports Syndicate. I think we're up to like 7 or 8 different teams that we cover now. We're getting really, really good recognition. Myself, Detroit Lions Syndicate, Indianapolis Colts Syndicate, Minnesota Vikings Syndicate, Miami Dolphins Syndicate. We just added a Los Angeles Chargers Syndicate. So we have a really, really cool network that we're trying to build, and I really want to build that. Plus, I'm also a member of the MHRT network. I'm on their flagship podcast, 5280 Mundungus Creevy, who is in the chat right now. He actually just brought it up. He is the main host of that. He's kind of our moderator. He's the one that keeps the other 3 of us in check and really keeps us from biting each other's heads off. But no, we have an awesome dynamic over there with Mundungus and Glenn Hauser and Cam Parker. I really enjoy doing that. So we'll actually be live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for our usual Tuesday podcast. Really hoping you guys can tune in and check us out. So, yeah, I'm doing a lot of good work with local upstart media companies here in Denver that I feel like are the future of this industry. YouTube is the direction that you even see the credentialed media outlets like 104.3 The Fan really promoting their YouTube stuff. Like Cecil Lammy and Andrew Mason, they do a daily show on YouTube, Orange and Blue Today, that, in my opinion, is up there with one of the best shows for Broncos coverage in the world. So YouTube is really the direction that all these networks should be pivoting to, and that's why you see a lot of them having YouTube channels. And it allows me, just some guy who really loves talking about my team and covering my team, it allows me to compete with guys like that. And that's not something that you would have seen even 5, 6, 7 years ago. That's the beauty of YouTube, and it's something that I think really, really started during the pandemic when you saw a lot more of these fan-led sports networks really popping up. And I also feel like I do still consider myself a fan, but I feel like I've kind of jumped more into the realm of analyst than fan. I still have that emotional connection to the Broncos. I always will. I will always love the Broncos, but I don't think I can call myself like a fanatic, like a absolute fanatic. I think I more have a professional stance to it now, but I still love the team. I'm still emotionally tied to the Broncos. I still rep the Broncos. I still wear my Broncos gear. I just think that my title has kind of started to evolve a little bit from fan to analyst. Wouldn't be surprised if the running back room ends up Estime, McLaughlin, and Blake Watson. I could see that, but you kind of would want to have one more power guy in the room. I think Blake Watson is more of a practice squad candidate at this point in time. Samaje Perine could be somebody who I would maybe put up there with Estime and McLaughlin. But you could also save $3.5 million if you cut Samaje Perine. If the Broncos want to get a little bit of money on their books coming out of training camp, then maybe that's the move that they want to make. Who's your favorite Broncos draft pick, Keanu says? Well, outside of the obvious Bo Nix addressing the biggest need, which was quarterback, I'm going to say Chris Abrams-Drain. I absolutely loved him. He was one of my guys coming out. I was super stoked and ecstatic that the Broncos got him. I envisioned him as the Broncos starting dime backer. So that's who I would say is probably my favorite Broncos draft pick. Literally was making me mad seeing teams get 100 yards or more. There will be no more of that. 100%. The Broncos defensive line was so squishy and soft, and it really got exposed in games like the Miami game, the Houston game, the Detroit game. That's where you really needed to see improvement, and the Broncos made some significant efforts to improve it. Good work, man. Keeping up, Marquee Sports says. Would love to do some content together. Absolutely. Hit me up. WNC Broncos fan, great content. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That rookie coming in is hungry. I can promise you he will make a name for himself during the preseason. To be honest, that's when we will see what quarterback will start because they will be under pressure. Absolutely. The question will become, which quarterback takes the first snaps for the Broncos in training camp next year or this coming year? Right now, I think that the guy who's probably earned that right is going to be Jarrett Stidham, but if Bo Nix outperforms Jarrett Stidham in the classroom and like during OTAs, minicamp, all that stuff, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Bo Nix does get that nod. You've drafted him 12th overall for a reason. And I've also seen arguments out there that say, what if Bo Nix isn't ready? If he's not ready, then Sean Payton's not going to be in a hurry to start him, obviously. But the man's played well over 60 college football games. He's played a lot of ball, man. He's seen almost every defensive look that you can possibly see. Sean Payton threw a lot of information at him during the pre-draft process, and according to all the reports that have come out, Bo handled it brilliantly. If you hear some of the other quarterback prospects that were out there getting asked, who was your toughest interview during the pre-draft process? Almost all of them said the Broncos. Some of them even said that Sean Payton would go through and highlight their negative plays and try to get them to explain and break down their negative plays and what their thought process was during those. And those were the instances where Bo Nix handled it really, really well, and he wasn't fazed by it. That's what gives me confidence in Bo Nix being ready to go week one, and he could go out there and more than survive. I think he could be competent. The thing is, too, some of these young rookie quarterbacks coming out, they've never taken a snap from under center before. They've never used a pre-snap verbal cadence. They've only been using the clap snap count. So they have to learn a lot of new, different, nuanced stuff that isn't even related to throwing the football or really actually like going through and throwing the football. It's just different stuff. It's also being able to get your team into the right fit in the run game, identifying the Mike linebacker. There's a lot of stuff that you have to process all in the span of like 5, 6, 7 seconds at the line of scrimmage before the ball's snapped. Are the safeties rotating their coverage? Are they trying to disguise what they're doing? What's the defensive front look up front? Are there 4 or 5 down linemen? Is there a nickel corner in the game? It's all stuff like that a quarterback has to be able to process in seconds. That's why some of these young quarterbacks come in and struggle. Bo Nix, playing as much football as he has, he's going to be able to come in and be ahead of the curve on that. Also, he's taken snaps from under center before. I don't know if he's used a cadence before, but that's something that I know Sean Payton has very heavy emphasis on. The Broncos had cadence issues with Russell Wilson and company last year, a 10-year NFL veteran. That is borderline inexcusable, man. Oh, sorry guys, I'm doing a live show. That is borderline inexcusable. So Bo Nix will be ahead of the curve on that stuff than some of the other rookie quarterbacks. That's what gives me confidence that he is going to be ready to go. We got Jay Reber in the house saying, don't want to trade Courtland, but if so, make sure it's the NFC, not the Steelers. Yeah, I would hope it would be the NFC, but right now, if he is going to get traded, which it doesn't sound like he's going to right now, Steelers seem like the most likely team. Mark says, I agree. We are the future as a small media. I absolutely think so too, man. We are the direction that sports media is heading, and I'm really, really proud to be a part of it. WNC says, I don't think Sutton gets traded. Bronco fan says, I'm definitely a fanatic. I still have that emotional connection to the team. I always will. I'll never be able to get rid of that. But I just don't know if I can professionally call myself a fanatic anymore. I get more information from watching these upstart channels than I ever get from the big networks. I feel like a part of that is because some of us upstart channels, we don't have to fill airtime, such as like ESPN, NFL Network, even shows like the Pat McAfee show now. They're committed to doing a 3-hour show, 4-hour show, 5 days a week. Sometimes there's just not enough NFL news to fill that, and in turn you get a lot of verbal diarrhea just trying to fill airtime. When I run out of stuff to talk about, I can just hit the end button at any time. I don't have a limit for how long my videos have to be or how long my live shows have to be. When we run out of stuff to talk about, that's when we'll stop talking. We're not having to fill 3-4 hours worth of airtime with just BS and nonsense. That's a big part of why I think YouTube is an up-and-comer in this sports media game, and why a lot more fans prefer to get their information from these upstart channels. Kind of makes me nervous we didn't take a premium offensive lineman in the draft. The Broncos' offensive line is honestly the least of their concerns. I will maintain that the Broncos' offensive line was really solid last year. A lot of the sacks that they gave up weren't even them giving them up. It was Russell Wilson walking himself into those sacks. The Broncos' offensive line was the least of their issues. Center is the only big question mark that they have. Mike McGlinchey got better as the year went on, so their right tackle issues were pretty much solid. Garrett Bowles was solid enough last year. So again, I just don't think the Broncos had that many question marks on their offensive line. The Broncos did sign 2 Aussies as UDFAs, D-Rock. They signed Thomas Yasmin, the tight end, and then they also signed... oh, God, I just want to make sure I pronounce this right. It was Nick Constantino, or he pronounced it, and I said it correctly in my video earlier. I'm sorry if I butchered it now, Nick, but yeah, they signed 2 Aussie players, 1 punter, and 1 tight end. Bo is definitely going to surprise some people, and I'm ready for it. I hope so, man, and I think that he's got a really good chance to, just because of how much people are underrating him. Yeah, but no premium offensive line picks. Really a little worried. Again, I think that the Broncos' offensive line is better than they get credit for. We got Michael Ronquillo in the house all the way from Tucson, Arizona. Good to see you, my friend. Evening, Gage. I nailed the Bo Nix pick. Good job, man. That was a good one from you. What grade would you give the Broncos draft? I gave them, I believe it was a B+ in my final draft grades. What brought it down a little bit was the trading up for Troy Franklin, and then I wasn't a huge fan of the Devon Bailey move at the time. I've kind of warmed up a little bit more to it now, so I'd say that it's probably improved maybe to an A-, but we'll see. Bo is smart enough that he'll learn the cadence in like 72 hours. I wouldn't be surprised if he's already learned it, quite frankly. I bet that Sean installed that into him during like the off-season stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he's already familiar with the 10, 12, 15 different cadences that Sean Payton likes to use. You heard Sean Payton complaining about this in press conferences, that they had to, quote, streamline their cadence last year. Russell Wilson was struggling with the Broncos using like 5, 6, 7 different cadences. And in turn, the Broncos' offensive line had a lot of false starts early on in the season. If you mix up the rhythm of your cadence, even by a little bit, if it doesn't sound the exact same almost every single time, your offensive linemen are going to flinch. They have to get used to the rhythm of your voice inflection of your cadence. That's why Aaron Rodgers is so good at it, is because he's able to mix it up, and he makes sure that his offensive linemen know when he's mixing it up, so that way they don't flinch and they don't get false starts. You don't want your own guys jumping. You're trying to draw the defense off sides. You're also trying to get them to declare information like who may be coming as a blitzer, other stuff like that. That's all information that you can get by using your cadence as a weapon. And the fact that the Broncos had a 10-year veteran on their roster, or 11-year veteran last year in Russell Wilson, and he wasn't able to use his cadence as a weapon, that's basic football 101 shit. That really is. And the fact that he wasn't able to use it was excusable. If Williams doesn't shake back, I believe that the Notre Dame running back will take his spot. I've seen film on him, and he's a monster for real. He really is. He's somebody who's nasty physical. He reminds me a lot of Javonte Williams. He really does. They're very similar. Agree, Gage. You control the content. Yep, 100%. All right, Mark. Sounds good, bro. See you later, dude. I'll meet you there, Mark Thomas said. Awesome, dude. They got to address tight end still, John says. Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. All right. Thank you, Thomas, for tuning in, man. All right, Broncos country. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. We're at about the 40-minute mark. I just wanted to get on and sort of address some of these Courtland Sutton trade rumors. If I think that he actually is going to get moved. Based on Mike Klitz's tweets, I don't think he's going to get moved. And then Benjamin Albright kind of walking back as well. I don't think that Courtland Sutton gets moved. But if he does, we'll obviously be the first to break it here on Broncos Syndicate. I'll be going live with Mark over on Steelers Nation Australia to discuss Courtland Sutton. Also, if he doesn't get moved, I still plan on going live with Mark at some point within the week. I want to discuss Russell Wilson with him. Somehow we haven't gotten on and done that yet. So I want to get on with Mark over on Steelers Nation Australia here with the next few days. So if you guys want to check that out, please stay tuned. I'll give you guys an update whenever we go live with him. In fact, we might do a dual stream both on Steelers Nation Australia as well as on Broncos Syndicate. So please be sure to keep an eye out for that. Also, guys, before we dip out of here, if you could do me a favor and leave a like on this stream as well as subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate it. We hit 3,000 subscribers just the other day, and we're already on the verge of hitting 3,100. I think we could hit it by the end of the day if we're really aggressive. So if you guys could hit the subscribe button if you have yet to do so, as well as hit the like button, I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are two free and easy ways to show your support, helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. All right, guys, and until next time, I'm your host, Gage Madrid. Say